All right, so hi everyone. So my name is Stéphane, and yeah, today I wanted to talk to you about what's new in Swift 2.2, 6.2. Just small bit of like what do I do? So I'm a staff engineer at Compass, working on the iOS team, and today I wanted to talk about this. So this is a very quick summary of basically what's new in Swift 6.2. So I'm just going to go quickly over everything there, explaining a little bit why that was done and what it does. And for each of them, there's a proposal that was done and that was accepted by the Apple team. And so if you want to, I'm going to include the number pretty much for each of them. And it's there. You tap Swift Evolution, you'll find it too in Google. And yeah, on that note, let's see the first thing. So first is row identifiers. If you use Swift, you know that there was still the backtick syntax where you could just add like a kind of extend the identifier, like using private keywords, for example. You could use like guard or switch. And this was extended to be much more flexible. So now you can have spaces, you can have operators, you can have numbers as well. So it should, like if you want, like instead of having like underscores in front of it, you can just have like the actual identifier that you want. One of the use cases for this is for the new Swift testing framework, where you can actually have the describe what the test does instead of having a test function with the test description alongside. Moving on to the next one, small change, enumerated sequence will be made to conform to collection. Right now it doesn't. This is what's returned when you call enumerated. And it's going to play more nicely with some SwiftUI APIs like list and for each. It will not conform to lazy collection protocol still to avoid breaking changes. So if you use lazy and enumerated, it's basically going to unroll the entire list right away, as it currently does. And I included a small workaround if you still wanted to do that. Now, another pretty interesting change, Swift 2.6.2, is the transactional observation of values. So now you can very easily create a nesting sequence that observes specific properties of an observable object. So I don't know if you can read the example on the right here, but like you have a very small person, you have first name, last name, and you have a computed property that has a name. And then if you look below, you have let names equal observations of the person.name. And that gives you basically a nesting sequence of the name whenever it changes. So if you change the first name or the last name, it's gonna have another value in that sequence. So it's a very powerful feature, I think, that's gonna really simplify how we observe changes to objects. Then another small one is weak let. So as you know, we could only use weak when with a var, and now we can use it with a let. That means that if you have a struct and you want to make it extendable, you don't have to resort to some kind of hacky workaround, for example, because you can have weak let directly, and it's gonna, like the compiler is gonna be fine with making it extendable. Before with var, it would just complain that it was like mutable, and it would just complain with a warning. So moving on to the next one, we have default actor isolation inference. So that's more for CLIs here. If you work on those, basically allows to create like single-threaded programs. Basically that default to a single isolation. So right now, the only possible values are non-isolated, which is the default behavior, or main actor, which means that everything executes on a single thread the main thread. So here, include a small example of what that looks like when you use main actor. Then there's also a global actor isolated conformance. So if you've written code with Swift concurrency, you will have seen this problem at some point, I think, where you will have an object that is main actor and you want it to conform to a quotable. And the compiler is going to complain that it's not able to actually make the synthesization. Or if you write it manually, it's going to complain that the quotable implementation must be non-isolated. So here, there's this new keyword, main actor, that you can add before equatable. That works for any global actors. That will make it so that the equatable conformance will only be callable from the main thread while making your object equatable. I hope that made sense. Next, you have synchronous tasks from calling context. There's a new helper called task immediate that will give you an async context synchronously. So that means that if you have, so I think those will be like specific in some specific cases, probably if you're making your own frameworks, for example, that you would use that like when developing an app. But it can be really useful if you know that something must happen async. It's not going to take a very long time to execute, and you know that, and you just want an async context to get it to run synchronously. So that's one of the use cases here. So the task is already completed by the time it returns. That makes sense. It literally blocks the thread, the current thread. So yeah, need to be cautious here on how to use it. Then another small one here. So the use is actually pretty complex, so impossible to simplify in a single slide here. So I kept it to a very minimal change. And you can basically escalate the priority of a task and observe those priority changes. So you can read more here in the proposal. They go into a lot of details as to why they've added this API. It's mostly for building frameworks and when you create like detached tasks. Then a small change as well. You can now name your tasks. There's a name parameter in the task that was added, and the debugger will be aware of the name of the task, and it's going to just make it easier for you to understand which task is what when you're debugging your app. Then another addition to the language, inline array. Just a small compile time array here, where it is similar to C++ std array and rustn if you use those languages. The way it's going to be defined is inline array. So here an array of 4 elements, and this is going to be known at compile time. So it cannot be initialized with an array that's 3 or more, or 5 elements, for example. And the allocations are done on a stack. This is different from a regular array where the allocation are done on a heap most of the time. And also wanted to mention the type sugar that's not in Swift 6.2, but I would just make the type declaration closer to what we have for arrays. Not sure if it's going to get accepted. It's currently under review, but that's 4 of int. Then another, I think, pretty great feature, string memory checking, where there's new attributes that have been added to the language, unsafe and safe, to indicate whether a declaration is unsafe or safe to use. So it's made to be pretty similar to the existing semantics for try and throwing, meaning that if a declaration is marked as unsafe, you have to use the keyword unsafe to be able to use it. You will get a warning if you don't. And the idea behind this is really to, for existing code bases to understand where code may be unsafe and potentially like, memory buffer overflow and stuff like that, so that they can be fixed basically preemptively by the using the compiler. And finally, another change is a small change for working with pointers here and unsafe code, where there's a new type called a span, which gives you basically represent a contiguous memory in the contiguous memory. So, for example, instead of having a pointer of an unsafe pointer and a count that describes how long it should be, you have a span that accurately contain the whole memory location here. So you don't have to pass the two parameters, and you only have one. That makes it safer. And that was actually the last one. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, everyone. I said that I was having deja vu because last year at the WWDC 2024 iOSoho, I went right before Stéphane, and we had like the same handoff there. Cool. Well, I'm going to talk about visionOS, what's doing visionOS 26. So anyway, I'm John. I'm actually a visionOS developer. I don't think there are very many of us, but I'm doing it pretty much full time now, freelance. Yeah. So currently, I'm working on an app with Bjork, which is really cool, and that should be coming out I think in September. But yeah, before getting started, oh yeah, I want to hit play. I want to give like a couple of my opinions about visionOS. A lot of people ask me, why should I learn visionOS or pay attention to it? I don't have a Vision Pro. It's a small audience. Why, are you crazy? Like, well, maybe a little bit, but a lot of features that come out every year for visionOS eventually creep into other platforms. Reality View is one that started out in visionOS, and then last year they brought it over to iOS, macOS, iPadOS. And I think some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, I would assume would eventually end up in the other ones too. Apple is actually clearly investing in spatial computing. Might not be obvious, but they actually announced a ton of stuff this year, a lot of tools, especially like a lot of tools that make it easier for people who are more used to the SwiftUI of building UIs and making it easier to work in the 3D space. It used to be much more like it used to be easier for like game developers and people like that, but now it's much more familiar to SwiftUI developers. Liquid Glass is another one of these things that this is just speculation for me, but the original like visionOS UI that I guess they showed off 2 years ago for the first time. It does have like a lot of similarities to the new Liquid Glass stuff. So it's just something to pay attention to see what's coming up next. Reality Kit features. Oh, I already mentioned that one. Also, it's fun. You get to do cool new stuff. I was an iOS developer for many years, and I wanted to do something different. I was tired of being in collection views all day, and this is it's more challenging, but you get to do like a lot of cool stuff, a lot of new stuff. Yeah. What's new? All right, I'm going to run through a ton of these things. Shared nearby experiences. I'll go into this one a little bit later. Lots to do. Reality Kit APIs. I'm going to demo. I'm not going to demo, but I'm going to show them. I actually did a longer version of this talk a few weeks ago during WWDC week at One More Thing. So I've taken out my live coding stuff, and I'm just going to do like screenshots of that. Spatial widgets. Those are widgets that can actually like appear like on walls and other surfaces. SwiftUI 3D layout tools. I'll get into that a little more. 90 hertz hand tracking. The hand tracking used to be a lot slower, and it was even slower than like the Meta Quest, which is a much cheaper device. So it's going to make gaming and things like that a lot better. VR controller, other accessory support. system level support for 180 and 360 videos. This might be a surprise because Apple's always showing these 180 videos, but there wasn't like a really clear like format for these, and there are also like a ton of third-party video apps out there, and they have to do things like build like mesh like spheres and stuff, and then like stitch things together. You probably still have to do the stitching together, but this is just more like clear from Apple. Like this is how you should be doing these videos. 3D Swift charts, new enterprise APIs that I don't know anything about, but I'm sure they're important. Cool. Well, yeah. All right. SharePlay nearby. This might be kind of surprising, but SharePlay is one of the coolest features in visionOS. But if you were doing it in the same space with someone else with a Vision Pro, you didn't have any like shared anchors for things. So they would be getting kind of like a different experience, and it might be kind of awkward. With this, if you're in the same space with other people, you can be kind of looking and interacting with the same thing in the same space. So yeah, that's not a real monkey. That's a 3D model of a monkey. It's not real. But they're both looking at the same monkey in the same spot. Okay, SwiftUI and RealityKit, better together. Better together is the actual title of the WWDC talk on this, and it's a great talk. I highly recommend it. Model 3D enhancements. So this is Model 3D is the SwiftUI type that is used to put 3D models into a SwiftUI view. And I'll show a little bit more of that. RealityKit, SwiftUI transition, you can more easily transition reality view. You can put reality views in SwiftUI view, and the coordinate conversion is a lot easier. Yeah, going from like the 2D space to 3D space, this was definitely painful before, so they're just making this a lot simpler. Object manipulation. You can add this dot manipulable modifier to a model 3D or probably an entity too. To kind of automatically make it so you can pick it up, move it around. This was actually like kind of challenging. It took a lot of time and like a lot of spaghetti code to make it work. But this makes it just so much easier. Observable entities. So entities in the RealityKit space, you can now observe properties of them in SwiftUI and respond to them, change them. Before, you have to do this in this update closure that runs like every frame. Which when you're doing that, it's very easy to get into spots with like where you can check something or do something too often. It's very easy to accidentally hit like a performance issue. And a couple other cool SwiftUI components. This view attachment component. You can put a SwiftUI view onto a 3D reality view entity. They used to have a thing that was just called attachment for this, but it was a little complicated to work with. This just makes it like just one thing that you add onto an entity. Gesture, this is the same thing. The gestures before you had to set up with a closure on the reality view. Now you can attach them directly to an entity, so it makes doing your custom gestures a lot easier. Presentation component. This is something to handle like popovers, and other ways of presenting views from a 3D object. Okay, this is the demo that it's not really a demo. It's just, I did this demo, but I'll just kind of explain it. So now with the Model 3D enhancements, one of the cool things you can do is you can have them be animated within a SwiftUI window. But like the most you could really do before is like just have it like spit around, and even that took a ton of code to do. But for something like this robot, the animations are baked in usually by like the 3D modeler, and you can, and just in code, you can pick out which one you want to do, and then, yeah, pop it right into your view. Okay, mesh instances component. So yeah, draw a mesh multiple times without copying an entity. So if you wanted to do something like this, like put a bunch of these monkeys in a space, you'd have to make copies of all of them. And that's just, not great for performance. All right, demo time. This is, I did this as a live demo before. I won't do it here though. That's actually 200 bananas. I started out with like 5 and then, slowly brought it up. So you can have, I brought it up to 1,000 at the most. And then after that, it did start to slow down, but it is pretty effective. Spatial widgets, you basically build these like you would build like other widgets for iOS. They are, as far as I know, they're completely 2D, but it's kind of cool. You can attach them to like specific places and they'll stay there. SwiftUI spatial layout. So doing something like this radial layout, this kind of carousel thing, this is a lot easier to do now, like with SwiftUI. Yeah, I've seen other things where that you can, where they're moving in all kinds of directions. This used to take a ton of code. There's now just like some like very simple modifiers to do that. Oh yeah, and that's it. All right, thank you.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Samir Dahmani. I'm a software engineer at Disney. I work on the ABC News streaming team. So today I'm going to discuss a couple new features that are coming to iOS 26. So by a show of hands, has anyone ever done like input routing in like an iOS app? Okay, a couple of you. So you might have noticed it's kind of a pain to adjust the input. It sort of changes under you. So that's because the operating system manages the audio routing. So if the user is like connected to their AirPods, but you want to connect to like something else, maybe an audio interface, the user essentially has to go into settings to change that and then return to your app. So in iOS 26, it looks like users aren't going to have to do that menu diving if you've implemented this new API. So there's a native input picker. And as you can see, you can pick the inputs straight from the app, and they give you this nice built-in view here. In addition to that, there's input level metering, which is kind of cool. Not the most, not the most straightforward feature to build. And there's mic mode selection, which is kind of handy. I think more for, I guess, meetings and Zoom call type stuff. But yeah, so fun new features there, and it looks pretty simple to implement. Just obviously, you probably have your audio session configured already elsewhere, ideally. Then you instantiate one of these AV input picker interactions. Stick a button on there, and this method just presents Apple's built-in UI. I'm not aware of any way to customize it at the moment, but we'll see. Moving on, something slightly more complicated. There's a couple new features coming to the spatial audio functionality. Haven't worked too much with this API, but give it a shot here. So if you're not familiar with spatial audio, it's basically different from stereo in that it's not just left and right. You have like X, Y, Z axes. So audio is kind of, it's in like a three-dimensional field. I'm sure you guys have experienced that with AirPods, probably by accident, but At least that's my experience. So the fancy name that they came up with for this was first order ambisonics. Yeah, so when this is kind of related to recording with spatial audio. So when you record with spatial audio, you do get head tracking on AirPods on whatever the program material is. And you can kind of see spatial audio with and without head tracking. There's also a new audio mix effect. And so what that's about is basically if you record something that has a lot of background noise, you can blend, I guess this is mostly for spoken word, you can blend like the speaker's words with the background noise. So you can remove the background noise, maybe have it at 50%, 20%, etc. And there's different modes like cinematic and stuff that sort of enhances the audio. Yeah, so let's see, the general flow for actually like recording spatial audio requires AV Asset Writer. Main thing you do is set the FOA mode, first order ambisonics. And for audio only apps, because this was typically something you did as part of like a video recording, video capture, you can record in the QuickTime audio format, which contains some like richer metadata and basically encapsulates both the stereo and the spatial audio track. For those of you who don't know, PCM is the sort of like high quality lossless format. You can kind of see what the object looks like. It's their own format called APAC. Yeah, so kind of go through this. This gives you like just a visual diagram of the flow here. So if you just record a regular capture session, you'd get stereo. If you want to record spatial audio, you'll basically get both stereo and the FOA. There's some new tags that were added with iOS 26. And yeah, this real quick is what it would look like to do some of the background and foreground blending. And also you can kind of see the cinematic mode is, yeah, essentially you can just set it to cinematic and it enhances the audio that you recorded. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Hey again, my name is Nikolai. As you remember, I'm an iOS engineer here at Snapchat in the Maps team, as I mentioned. Today I'm going to talk about new things in SwiftUI. Yeah, that were introduced in iOS 26. Obviously, I won't cover all the new APIs. I picked a few that I played with. And yeah, also I mostly focused on iOS because I'm working with mobile. So sorry, iPadOS, macOS, and visionOS developers. Yeah, so we can start. Let's start with the rich text. In iOS 26, it's available in text editor, and you can get this fancy picker, which is gonna appear, this one, for free, almost for free. That's how we're gonna get it. We can just use attributed string here and bind it to the text editor. And yeah, here we are. We're gonna get this format menu with this thing. So it looks fine, but the tricky thing is that you can get this tray only from the context menu. And I couldn't find a way to invoke it programmatically. Okay, but that means that we're gonna build our own UI for formatting. And let's start with making this text bigger. So we can put a button and yeah, to achieve that, we need to add the new object available on iOS 26 attributed text selection, and also bind it to the text editor. And then this part is doing the magic. This new method on the attributed string, transform attributes, is doing like all the formatting. Here in this closure, we can do everything, the formatting of the selected text, of selected string. Yeah, so we can use this method to apply different formatting options. For example, we can do bold text, italic, underlined, put some color on it, and yeah, for example, and we do it the same way. And to control, for example, the bold one, we can just get the font from the selection, resolve it to get the access to this is bold property, and then just toggle it. Like, yeah, it's pretty easy. Yeah, so these buttons they look pretty regular, right? So I bet you've heard something about liquid glass, and let's just utilize this design. Here we are. We can make the buttons liquid glass now, like apply the material. And yeah, we can achieve it just by adding this new glass button style in the button. The funny thing is that in the WWDC session, they introduced two new button styles, this one, glass and glass prominent, but I couldn't find the second one, so we have only one now. Yeah, so we might also want to make it even nicer and put them to the toolbar. We can get it for free. I have some notes here, sorry. Yeah, we can get it for free, and yeah, they look pretty nice. These are just toolbar items, so nothing new. The iOS 26 just like apply the new design to them for free. And yeah, additionally, I have added toolbar spacer. This is a new thing, and it allows us to separate the buttons in the toolbar, which is pretty nice. Looks pretty nice, like an edge stack, you know. Yeah, so it looks cool, but you can see that our title is cut off now. So we're gonna do something with that. For example, we can put these buttons to the menu. And again, nothing new here. Nothing new at all. It's just this material applies to the menu object, to the menu view, and looks pretty nice. Yeah, so as we finished with the rich text, let's move on to the WebKit. In iOS 26, we can display web pages in the app as regular SwiftUI view, which is pretty cool. As far as I know, many engineers have been waiting for this particular API for a long time. Yeah. So finally we have it, and yeah, here on the view, I'm trying to to show you again this liquid glass, how it reflects the. You can see it here, how it reflects to the scrolling. Yeah, and to get this, to get this web view, we have to create the new object that's available on iOS 26 web page, and also put it to the web view, and then load this page with the URL. By the way, it's our meetup, if you haven't noticed. Yeah, so what else? Yeah, new API allows us to do much more. For example, we can access some web pages attributes and use them in our apps. For example, look at this title, and when we jump between pages, the title is changing. How do we do this? We just use SwiftUI. Like, I like SwiftUI for its reactive nature. Here we can use the state var title. We can put it to the text in the toolbar item. And then when the attribute, here's the new thing, the attribute of the page, the title, when it's loaded, when it's fetched, we can assign it to this state var, and here it is. It's just changing. So also, how about some navigation to our app? How about to add some navigation to our app to be able to improve the browsing experience? Let's do that. And Liquid Glass again. It's toolbar again. Looks pretty nice, I think. And here you can see how it reflects. You can see better how the buttons reflect on this scrolling, on the scrolling. Yeah, and here we're doing the same, almost the same as on the previous slide. We just these buttons allows us to go back and forth through the pages we already visited by accessing its properties. Like it has lists of the pages. So although this one already looks nice, too many things looks nice in this presentation, I think. Yeah, you can notice these. We'll see it again soon. Like there is a banner on the meetup.com site, this one, which is pretty annoying because it's conflict with our navigation bar. So it will be nice to get rid of it, and we can do it. We can add a button on top of it. You can see, wow, it disappears. So how do we do this? This is, we can add a button that calls some JavaScript code and on the page, on the web page, and it allows us to get rid of, like, to hide some elements on the website, which is pure magic, I think. This is how it looks in the code, and yeah, you're just passing some script, some JavaScript script, and yeah, and waiting until it's executed. You can also use it to parse something from the page. You can use it to scroll to some part of the page, and I think there are a handful ways, or even more, how you can use it. This is Liquid Glass. Yes, it's yeah. As you can see, this how these buttons reflect on the scrolling, like on the background, and it's actually sometimes it works weird, but most of the time it looks pretty nice. Yeah. So other, like, that's all what I played around with. But other significant new APIs I haven't covered is animatable macro, which allows us to reduce the boilerplate code for when you work with animation for views. Also, there are some significant updates for searchable modifier, view modifier. There is Liquid Glass custom view, so I use the toolbar buttons, but you also can create your own. Like, you can apply the glass to some views, to regular views, for example, to a label, and play around with it. So you can create your custom glass views. Also, scene bridging and interoperability with UI. SwiftUI works better now with UIKit, with AppKit, and with RealityKit. That John mentioned that. And 3D charts, which is not that exciting, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Like, anybody ever use charts in their apps? Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, and there are some more small things, but yeah, these three, I think the most important things are rich text, the liquid glass adoption, and of course the web view and that kit. In conclusion, I want to say that there aren't many new things for SwiftUI this year, and I'm not entirely sure this liquid glass is that I like it that much, as many of us, I think, but we'll see how it's gonna work. However, the framework is getting more mature each year, I mean SwiftUI, and as a fan of this framework, I really, truly like SwiftUI. I appreciate that Apple is betting on it, and I hope they're gonna improve it more next year. Thank you.
Hey, all right. One more before you guys can stretch your legs. I know you already had too much information. Bear with me. I'm gonna try to be quick. So I'm gonna talk to you about what's new in Xcode and testing. My name is Mani. I work at LinkedIn, and also I do voluntary work at Codeco, where some of you might know. So let's jump into it. Today, I'm gonna just cover quickly what's new in Xcode, generally the features that I cared about. So during preparation, I was selfish. I put more time on the things that I cared about, and also add notes on the things that I wasn't. So hopefully we're aligned in our opinions there. And so I'm gonna cover some improvements, some AI stuff that most likely people are very excited about, some optimizations, and at the end, we're gonna cover something that I've done in the testing. For improvements, generally, this year we have new Xcode 26. You should be able to download and install it in your current OS if you don't wanna go all beta. In this, they try to change the UI, but the UI hasn't changed as significantly to make things more complicated. They now have a new tab UX that when you open, it's kind of very similar to the Safari when you open. I think it's nice UI. You can see the screenshot here. It's okay, but tabs has been already confusing, so I don't know how much it's going to help. The other thing that's been very actually exciting to see is voiceover. Now you can just use your voice to just do coding. So if you even kind of like for those who kind of like for accessibility, this is super useful. And also for you, if you want to just run on treadmill and try to code, now you can. They added a new string catalog. This is something I personally have been kind of like looking for it because it's been a little bit weird that you have to use the strings to just copy paste them around. And that's been something that since beginning of coding, I was yelled at not to do that, but in iOS Word and Apple Word, that was okay. This year, they added finally some code gens that are gonna make it safer for you to deal with your localizations. I'm gonna get back to this during the AI talk, which is some other things that I've done, like generating comments now can be done through AI, which is like super cool. Some of the improvements that I'm not gonna go deep into, like they've done a lot of improvements on instrument, on how to debug your SwiftUI, how to know like when the renderings are happening. They've done so many about multi-threading, CPU usage, these all things that I'm not gonna go into, but those are also important things that I've done this year. So if you care about, I highly recommend go watch the videos. Now, one other thing that I've done, which is super cool, something that actually I personally gonna use it a lot, is they added a playground macro. So what it is something that if you ever wanted to test your code, you either had to run it, go through the debugger, or if you're using SwiftUI, you had to you could use just the kind of like the context, run it, and do all of those things. Or if you like me, you add a playground file to your Xcode and hope for Xcode don't go crazy and run it, and you can see what's happening there. This year, they added a playground macro. What is this? It is something that you can do. So for most of these also things here, because lack of time, I'm just putting snapshots here. If anybody want to see them in action, I have my laptop with me that I'm on beta on all OS, Xcode, and everything, so you can come and see it in action. But what it does is you can create a playground macro, write your code, and on the right side, you can see what's happening. And it's live. Like in the demo that they use actually locations. So they go look at the parsing of the location, they see like the latitude and longitude of each of them, and then they find the bug, they fix it, and you can see that live. So it's very similar to the playground file that you have. It's that responsive, at least in a small projects that I've tried it out. And it's something that can help you to get more insights, debug something very quickly at your model level. Which now going to the AI, I'm going to jump a little bit ahead here. With AI, you can also generate the playground for you. So you can ask AI to do those codings for you. Like what you're seeing here is AI generated for me. I did zero coding to just get something like this generated. And the other one call out is you need to have playground. Playground is a new kind of like, it's something that you need to implement in your packages, which also surprisingly, AI can import it and put it at your import section instead of adding it right where it's adding the code. So that was another a smart thing that AI could do. Now, for something that most people are probably very excited about. With this year, Xcode has added the AI capability. But they're using, internally, they're using ChatGPT. Underneath, for those of you who don't have accounts, you can still use it. It's free. There's a limitation on the daily. I don't know what's exactly the number, but if you hit it, you probably have to just take a break until tomorrow. For those of you who pay for it, you can come in and add your account here, and you can sign in. For others that are very kind of like want to use their own, they have their MCP, they have their local, they have everything else. There's the add modal provider that you can go add your account. You want to use cloud, you want to use your own local, you want to use something else. There's a way to add that model here. So you can just go and add anything that you kind of like, that's your preference. The way that it works is now you have this icon under navigation. Is called Coding Assistant Navigator. That's where you can access it. You can start doing a chat. There are two icons. I also put it in a large one at the bottom right. You can see like one of them is actually gives the context. So many times when you deal with AI, one of the most important things is you have to give it the context. At those times that you find yourself, AI is playing dumb, that's because it doesn't have the context. More files, more things you give to it, it can be more productive. So that's one of the most important parts in dealing with AI, is just you have to help him to help you. So context is what you, like by default, Xcode provides all your files and project context to the ChatGPT. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to ask it just a general question, or you have concerns about your privacy of the project or anything, you can just uncheck this. And that means the AI that you're talking to, the ChatGPT, doesn't have any context, doesn't use any of your files, and you can just use it that way. The other one is how much control you want to have. The other icon just tells it, hey, go apply hold, like you're suggesting it to my code. Or if you don't want to see, if you want to just review it first, you can just uncheck these. If you have it checked, doesn't mean that you can revert. It just takes a snapshot of your code before and then show it the way that it kind of like changes, so that you can still compare, see what it did. But for any reason, if you don't feel comfortable, that's something that you can do. The other actually cool things is you can use @sign and refer to your files, refer to different kind of like things that you want to do. And then there is command +0, the shortcut. If you like want to use shortcut and show off, that works. The other one, that's one way to use AI. The other one that you want to use AI is a coding tools. Coding tools is more of like an inline. So what's the difference? If you've been using AI in any of your projects, you're probably familiar with the agents versus just like a command, like this is one of things. That's kind of the difference. Like with a coding assistant, you can just go back and forth to tell it, hey, you mess up, go fix your color code and things like that. Coding tools is more of for one-off things or only a specific part of your code. You want to just interact with it. The things that I'm personally very excited about is write me documentations. that's great because I don't want to do that. They explain, I haven't tried it, but it's usually something that works, and that's what LLMs are really good at. The other one is generating previews or playgrounds, like depending on which, like here you can see, because I'm kind of like highlighting kind of like SwiftUI, I don't see the playground, I see the preview. But if you highlight a piece of code that is like your model or something, you will see the option for generating the playground, and it's going to generate a playground for you. The other part is also anytime you see errors, you can also, you see the option about generate the results, like fix this error by AI. So it's going to use AI to go figure out what this error is about and try to fix it for you. So these are other kind of like options and additions that you have access in Xcode to use AI for your benefits. With that, we're now going to move on to kind of like optimizations that I have done. This is merely just for FYI. If you care about them, this is what has happened. Xcode is now 24% smaller, which is kind of like I went and looked at with the previous ones. It is actually true. One of the things is they removed the metal toolchain. Now it's like if you really need it, you can download it. They also remove Intel runtime support from the simulator, so it's not there anymore. If you had to deal it before, you had to, like, you probably had see your simulators not showing up in Xcode, and I had to go download the Rosetta version because of Xcode being Xcode. Hopefully we're not going to see that. The one that I really care about, because at LinkedIn our kind of like project is super large, is just like the workspace load is now supposed to be up to 40% faster. And that's generally faster for the larger workspaces. I gave that a try, and that felt like faster. So it's great. The other one that I don't know how it can be tested, but the text inputs is now 50% faster in a more complex expression. And there are so many other features I'm not going to cover here. Like I think we have a talk later today about like creating app icons, which is now another application part of Xcode. And there were so many other things that are part of the Xcode, but they're touching base in other areas that we're not covering. But there's a talk about what's new in Xcode, which is actually very exciting and highly recommend to see. The last part that I want to cover, which is something that I'm actually very excited about to go and try to explore, has been the testing changes that they have done. I don't know how many of you have seen, but probably, I don't think I know anybody who enjoys writing UI tests. And this is actually one of the interesting parts that I have done. They created a way for you to record your actions while you're interacting with simulator. So here you can see that you can go to your you can go to your UI test. It's an empty test. On the left side, there's going to be an icon shows, and when you tap on it, it's going to build your app, run your app on simulator, and it starts recording every action that you do. And when you do those actions, it tries its best to create this. Like here it was a Mac OS application that I was working on. It just kind of like does activation, just as a static text click, and then it just says go here, click that, and everything. And generates this for you. And the reason also you're not seeing those two lines are kind of the same, but it's also gives you the option, so you can see all these things that are kind of like highlighted. You can change how it queries. So if you have written UI tests, the way that UI test works is you have to go find your element that you want to click. By doing that, you have to write a query, and how you write that query is how kind of like robust your test gonna be. And that's the main thing about the whole UI test. So it gives you an option to kind of like define how you want to do that. One of the things that I found super useful here is go and add accessibility identifiers to your elements, because I tried this in a movie application, which is open source. And when I tapped on any of those cells, it says go tap on a cell that has this movie description. So that was 5 lines. And when I tried to run that test, Xcode yelled at me. So don't do that. Add your accessibility identifiers. And that's the recommended way to go to write this. But this is super cool, because now you can have a starting point to go about. This works with text inputs, kind of like doing verifications, everything. So it's a really, really great tool to promote people to try to love writing UI tests. There's a reference that we post this in our Meetup channel, most likely, but what's new in Xcode, it's the one that I highly recommend if you're interested into dive in deep learning more. And there's a bunch of other videos on there that helps you. Code along is a, that session goes into depth into the localization changes, and you start coding along the presenter to learn more about the new changes. Record replay and review is the one that talks about the UI automation. It also goes a little bit deep into like talking about the testing in general. So the session talks about the kind of like review that this new feature a little bit, but it covers a lot of like testing areas. Yeah, we don't have time for Q&A, but if anybody has any questions, find me, talk to me. Yeah, thanks.
Apple Intelligence. So there's been a lot of talk about Apple Intelligence, and there have been some updates. So I'm going to talk about what is Apple Intelligence and foundation models specifically, why on device, what developers can build. So this is probably really dumb. I'm going to do a live coding demo. I think that's incredibly stupid. It's probably as dumb as eating pizza that I did earlier without my lactose pills. So we're going to see what happens. So it might be a little bit shorter than it's supposed to be. So anyway, so what is Apple Intelligence? Apple says it's an AI to help you write, express yourself, and get things done effortlessly. It draws on your personal contacts without allowing anyone else to access your personal data, not even Apple, which I think is kind of cool. Generally, I think of Genmoji. I don't know if any of you have seen that. That was the big thing for a while. Genmoji. That's generally not what I think of as the promise of AI. But I think Tim Cook had to say something to the board. So instead, now we have foundation models. So this actually is really cool, I think. This is AI in the phone. It's a full model within the phone. It is 3 billion parameters on device. I didn't know what that means, but it sounds fancy. But for ChatGPT, just as an example, this is still, it's a lot of information on the device. But for ChatGPT, it's 300 billion. So it's a tenth of that. But it is, it's still pretty amazing. As far as I know, it's the only device that does this. It actually has on device, you have your own LLM. And ChatGPT tells me that you can do live translation, visual intelligence, and Genmoji, there it is, and more. That's what ChatGPT tells me. For me, that's not all that exciting, but we'll get to what is exciting. I think on device is cool because it's completely private, which is usually an issue. But I think there's more to it. So it's about, for me, this is the real promise of that. Genmoji for me was not that exciting. I actually put in like, I'm not that excited about Genmoji, and it didn't let me do that. Instead, it put bird shit on my head and put this up. So this is what this response was. I don't use this thing. So these models we can use in Xcode, and we can use them to build all sorts of things. And usually, if I'm sure many of you have used ChatGPT and AI, usually the issue is you get a lot of data back. It's tokenized, and it's just a bunch of information. And how are you going to use that in an app? The way you can use it in Apple is you can structure it. You can make it into models, which is kind of incredible. Specifically with this @generable wrapper / macro. And that's where the real power is. On top of that, you can then go into the model and tweak it more using something called a guide and instructions, which is like roles, for those of you familiar with this. Also on top of that, as was mentioned before, there are playgrounds, but playgrounds you can use to access the AI, which is super cool. So there are actually a lot of, there are a few really cool videos on this on WWDC, which I recommend. They're fun to watch. So I'm already at the demo. All right, here we go. Yeah. So I'm on the wrong thing. This is Apple's thing, this itinerary view. So they use this to build like a app that can tell you where to go, because it's really hard to Google sometimes. I don't know, whatever. It'll tell you where to go if you put in like a landmark, and it'll automatically set you an itinerary. I mean, you can keep going with the information that it's going to give you. So you can set an itinerary, you can set a whole, you can go into more detail about that, you can tell people what to go to. This is the model that they use. So instead of just saying, hey, give me an itinerary, you use this model and you say your destination, your days, your budget, your rating, your activities. You can take input from the user, and you can go much more into detail with this. This is just a basic example. It's for structs and enums, enum, however you like to say it. I'm going to show you, so I made a quick little app. This is, but first I'm going to show you the playground. So, Canvas, don't, please, okay, there we go. So this is live, this is working. It takes a while, but I set up a session, and within that session I give it instructions, which is what we basically call a role. You're a savvy, cynical programmer, impressed but not overly impressed with AI, and who thinks it'll eventually destroy humanity. True. So what do you think of the title foundation models? And then you see this try, wait, respond, and the content. The title sounds good, like it was written by someone who's either genuinely excited about AI or desperately trying to sell you something. This is pretty amazing and pretty spot on. But you can go on now. And so now I say, create a listable titles for a 5-minute talk on that subject. And that's prompt. Let me, sorry, get down to there. And this, I didn't do a great job in terms of making these into models, but I did use that model for these like titles. So it gives me unleashing power, foundation models, and Apple Intelligence. I didn't happen to use any of these, but I could have. Revolutionizing apps. So anyway, you get it. There's a bunch of titles. Then based on that title, create an agenda. And then I go down. As with all AI, it's fun to play with, but I don't know that I necessarily recommend, unless you want something highly mediocre, going with this information. But anyway, so then there's an agenda. And then, and furthermore, create the content for each agenda. So basically it writes the whole thing. So I tried to make the app do this whole thing. Let's see if I got it going. So I say, who is the speaker? Let me give it a shot. Faulty. So the role, and then what their perspective is, cynical and washed up. What do you want to talk about? I don't know. Pizza? Pizza wrap? Oh, pizza wrap. It might not know it. So I was going to try to get this to do the whole talk that I just did, and it doesn't know anything before after 2023. So was pizza wrap before? Oh, okay. All right, let's see. Because sometimes I get an error on this. There it goes. You got a whole talk on it. Remember, behind the crust. So then I click on that. It gives me an agenda. And I have the agenda for my talk. This is terrible. I'm sorry, the UI is terrible. I'm sorry. Origins and cultural impact. Crashed. There's too much information. So there is actually a way to deal with that too. So I have too much information, but I didn't do a good job of this. I wasn't doing that before. Oh, I know why. Actually, yeah, this is the problem with using humor. I commented out the right code to do that. I can show more of that actually in Playgrounds if you guys want to. I don't know. I don't know. I think we need to make up time, but the point is with these Playgrounds, you can actually try out so much of this code. Let me get back to this. All right. So there's a demo, just a really brief demo. Just wanted to show you. There's some really cool stuff they do online. They make a game, the WWDC thing, they're like doing a game. I mean, the thing is, like, AI can do a lot of the stuff that we can do, but you have to sort of ask yourself why. Why do you want it to do that? And so a lot of people ask, what are the fact that some people ask these questions, you know? It's fine. It's all good. Well, I'll have jobs. But anyway, your phone is helping that all to happen. So that's it. Thanks. If you have any questions, ask me. I can demo more. Well, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Winston. So today I'll be talking about interactive snippets, which was introduced in WWDC 25. So show of hands, who has ever used app intents with iOS? Not many. So for those of you who don't know, app intents is just a way as you, the app developers, to give the operating system, generally iOS, and indirectly, therefore, Apple Intelligence / Siri, I don't know what they call it these days, the ability to do things when your app isn't in the foreground. So earlier on, so before this year's WWDC, app intents already existed. And in previous years, they introduced this ability to show a snippet view. So for example, if your app intent, let's say you're the developer for Starbucks, you create an app intent to order coffee, right? So the user asks Siri, hey, order me coffee. Siri, if it works correctly, would route to your app intent, and your app intent would execute and order you coffee. But what a lot of developers found was that, hey, I kind of want to show something very, branded, and show, much more something much more custom and much more branded to a user after that coffee order either finished, completed, or failed. So Apple created this capability to show a snippet view. So this is all in your main app, right? And by the way, this is not, in an app extension or anything. So how do you create allow your app intent to show a snippet view? Again, your app's backgrounded. The user might be browsing some other app. Let's say they're browsing on Instagram and they're like, oh, I kind of want coffee, or like, I kind of want to order my toothbrushes off of Amazon, right? Let's say Amazon has created an app intent to make an order. How would you sort of do that? So here's the example that Apple sort of shows, where, hey, let's say I created an app intent to find the closest landmark to the user. So let's say there's some method called find closest landmark, and it's going to return a result, and that is a view. That is a landmark view. Okay. And to visually show you like what it looks like, it would be something like this. And the static landmark view that I just showed you is a SwiftUI view. So you can do all things, make it custom, you can add an image, do a VStack, do all that navigation, all that jazz to basically show this to the user when they ask Siri or they activate a shortcut to do this particular action. So to summarize, you want to create the app intent. So you create a little struct conforming to app intent. In your perform method, which in order to conform to app intent, you have to have that perform method. You need to say, hey, this is a the return type is going to conform to show snippet view. And then you also define your general SwiftUI view to show this. So just like as for those wondering, we can have this little dependency macro here. This is an app intent specific macro. And usually when you initialize your app, you would sort of add that as a dependency. So that way, when the app intent launches, it can just make sure, hey, like I have this effectively this global singleton that's injected when my app intent activates. So to review, this is how you would show a little static snippet view after your app intent executes. You ask Siri, hey, what's the closest landmark to me? Siri does some thinking, maybe uses your location, yada, 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 and then shows this little view to you, even if your app is backgrounded. So that all exists. And finally, if you want to actually make it easy to debug or give Siri a particular catchphrase to activate this particular intent, you would just say, hey, you would just add it to app shortcuts and give it the particular phrase, and Siri's going to basically translate this in multiple languages and try and like transform the string so that way when you activate Apple Intelligence and you're like, oh, find closest landmark in travel tracking app, it should activate your intent. But the main reason why you want to also do this is so that way, if you open up the Shortcuts app in iOS, you can kind of use the Shortcuts app as a little debugger in order to activate your app intent. So to review, again, this is not WWDC 25, this already existed before, is how do you have your app intent show a snippet view? One, you define the intent, make sure its perform method returns a type conforming to show snippet view. You define the SwiftUI view of your snippet that you're going to show. And for easy testing, again, you just add it to your app shortcuts by just creating a new file in your main app, and you create a struct conforming to app shortcuts provider, and boom, you have this. Now, what if you wanted your little view here to be interactive? Well, as a developer, you might think, hey, I'm showing a SwiftUI view. Great, like I can, I can create a little view model. So here's the example that they show you in WWDC 25, which is, hey, let's say this app intent showed a snippet view and like you have a little heart button, right? Like you kind of want to tap that heart button so that way, oh, you favorite this particular landmark. So if before this year, you're actually out of luck. Why? You might think, hey, I have a SwiftUI view. We have a view model. I can define a view model. I would have a little publish var is favorite, and then like I would create a little update favorite method, and then within the SwiftUI view that backs my snippet, I would initialize it, create that little view model, and I would in the actual body I would define, hey, I'm going to create a button. The button action is going to be view model.model data, like update favorite or something like that. Like you undertake an action. And then finally, you would pipe through, like what you need to do when you construct that view in the perform method of your app intent. You might think, hey, that totally works, right? Because I have a SwiftUI view, I have a view model, it should reactively update. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. If you tried this, you would just have a dead view and you can't interact with it, even though, again, you would have literally this button. It can't do anything within your app. So introducing interactive snippets, and this is how Apple in the new, after the WWDC 25, intends for developers to accomplish this. Again, what we're trying to do here is create this little snippet, and you can like tap that little heart button. The natural way that you think it works doesn't work. So how does it work? So first you're going to start out with your app intent. But instead of returning a SwiftUI view, what you're going to do is you're going to have your perform method return a snipping intent. Okay? And then you're going to define that snipping intent that you just had your app intent. Again, app intent, snipping intent, they're different things. You have your app intent, return a snipping intent. And that snipping intent has a perform method that returns a snippet view. That's your custom SwiftUI view. Now, within your custom SwiftUI view, what you're going to do is you're going to use the special version of button that where the action is instead a particular intent that you define. I know it's very complicated. We're already like, we have an app intent, a snipping intent, and a landmark view, and a new version of button. And now we have a third intent, an update favorites intent. What does that do? You create the update favorites intent. You could say, hey, like it's a intent, it has to be sendable. It would take in some parameters, and it has its own perform method. And in that perform method is where you would actually do the real logic that you would have done in that non-working version I showed you before, which is await model data, the update favorite, and you return any entity that changed. Now, finally, according to Apple Docs, whenever someone interacts with a snippets button or toggle, the system first performs this associated app intent. When the button or toggle intent completes, the system calls the snippet intents perform method again. Okay, very confusing. So let's quickly just dive into what exactly happened in this nice little diagram. So we have the app intent. The app intent returns you a parameterized snipping intent as its result. That results snipping intent is going to return you a SwiftUI view that happens to have a button that where on tap another intent might be fired. In this case, our update favorites intent. And then when that update favorites intent completes and returns you a particular result, then it's going to go back up to the loop and parameterize the snipping intent that we defined is going to run again. So again, this is going to run again once the button is pressed and the core logic of the update favorites intent completes. This perform method is what runs again and returns a new result. And then SwiftUI's underlying diffing engine will just say, oh, I'm already presenting a landmark view. I just need to present a new one. Okay, what changed? It's just the is favorite changed. I'm going to animate that. Oof, very, very complicated. But under the hood, and if you're a developer, you're trying to make an interactive snippet, this is what Apple wants you to go through. Define an app intent, have it return a snipping intent, have the snipping intent return a SwiftUI view where all of its buttons activate a different intent that do the core logic before you finally, the system automatically performs your snipping intents perform method again. I don't know why they did it that way. It's very confusing. So that's why I decided to do a lightning talk on it, just to make it hopefully a little bit clearer for how developers should implement the simple thing of adding a little heart button to this little overlay intent that you show. But yeah, don't know why they had to do it this way, but if you ever want to build app intents and you want to show a snippet view and you want some interactivity on your snippet view, Apple, as of this year, introduced that capability. but you have to do all these different things to allow you to hard a button. But thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Popov. I'm the Director of Engineering at Open, and I'm going to talk for a moment about the new integrations in HealthKit, specifically for iOS and iPadOS. And basically, my short version is this is how it probably should have been built from the beginning, and it wasn't. And I'll explain what happened and how we got here in a moment. Quick little bit of context. For us, this is relevant because I run an app called Open. We're a mindfulness, meditation, yoga, breathwork studio. And we have an app where you can actually do kind of these practices. You can take classes. And for our users, when they are doing this, one of the things that we've built is we worked with Apple when they were launching the Beats headphones. And so there were ways in which we worked with tracking your heartbeat during your practice so that we can actually show you kind of a graph of how did your heartbeat change as you meditated, as you did a breathwork practice, what have you. For context, how did this work before? And so kind of what was the state of play up until this year? Everything relied on HealthKit. That's still the case. But because of the way that HealthKit was built and because of the way that all kind of sensor data came from the watch was always the first party. And the idea was that all workouts and anything to do with tracking data came from the watch. All the sensors were in the watch. Everything came from the watch. And so the only thing you could do from the app's perspective is at the end, ask what happened. You could also do things like have peripherals, again, like with the headphones, those were separately collecting data and also just sending it into HealthKit. But again, you had no direct line into what was happening there. If ultimately we wanted to show something like this graph at the end, we basically had to separately and strangely collate how we did that. Like genuinely for us, when we built this feature, what we would do is if we knew you did a 10-minute meditation, at the end of the 10-minute meditation, we would query HealthKit to say, hey, how has the heart rate been for the last 10 minutes? And by the way, they just did a 10-minute meditation. And we could post things into HealthKit, but we could not say that they were doing a practice at the beginning. If that makes sense. So kind of where do we go from here? Good news and bad news. They've given us a lot of functionality, but kind of with it, it's kind of a double-edged sword where you now have to own a lot of pieces of this, which are a little bit onerous. And this is basically its own whole life cycle that you now get to own. From setup to prepare, which I'll talk about for a moment, the actual kind of life cycle of doing the workout where you're getting a lot of data, start, collect. There's a cool new idea with stopping, and then I'll talk at the moment at the end. So as far as how kind of the setup goes, this is what the boilerplate code you will have to write every time you want to say you're starting a workout. And one thing I'll just say at the top of this is as much as this is like a new, cool, shiny API that they're unlocking, the way they've written this looks like code from 10 years ago from my perspective. This is a lot of delegate and data source methods. This looks like a table view. And the reality is you also have to conform to a bunch of delegate and data source things and just be like, hey, what happens when my did change to and my did collect data of and whatever. There's basically from our end, we're building wrappers now on top of this to make this be like publisher, combine, async friendly. But what's bizarre is if you watch the actual dub talk, they're like integrating this code with async patterns, but it's strange that they didn't just build it in a more kind of modern API way. Anyway, with prepare, there's a call out from them about the fact that we now have to handle prepare logic if you're going to own kind of starting a workout. And this also reveals like an interesting little bit of API, I guess like under the hood logic that on the watch, if you've ever started a workout, when it's doing this countdown, it's not just for UI. That is actually when it is priming all of the sensors, and the sensors are not ready until it gets down to 1. And so the expectation is that you will not actually start doing anything with the workout during this prepare session. And you have to also provide your own UI that will similarly do a countdown. So own it if you want to own it. Otherwise, with kind of the play of actually running a workout, you get access to a bunch of really good data as far as you can do things like interactivity on lock screen, assuming you accept yet another new style of alert from the user. If they accept it, then you can get really nice interactive widgets on the home screen. You're able to do a lot more, and this is where it gets really granular and nitty gritty, where like if you are running the Powerbeats headphones and you are yourself collecting heart rate data, you can pipe that into the workout as it's going and decide the granularity that is relevant to your workout that you actually think should be piped into the workout. You can also add your own non-device peripheral kinds of things, like how many times did they drink a bottle of water or something if they're marking that somehow on the app. But basically, you're given a lot of new APIs for during workout logging when things happened. There's an interesting new functionality around crashing, which is they kind of brushed over, and I have just lots of questions. But ostensibly, if your app crashes and the system knew you were running a workout, the system is actually going to try to start your app again. And I don't know what it means, how that's going to work, and how that will actually get handled, and how many times it will do that. Like if it crashes again, at what point does the system give up? But effectively, you have kind of a new app delegate method, which again, surprising, it's not a scene delegate method. But they have an app delegate method where you can recover and go back to a workout session. Otherwise, yeah, kind of summary comments are, it is genuinely finally a shift from it being just a watch first platform to actually allowing you to run these things on iOS and iPad, which again feels like it should have been the way. As I said, kind of bad delegate patterns, but very cool ability to control how data is collected and how you can associate it, and maybe better disaster recovery. I think that's pretty much it. Sorry. I feel like I did that quickly. What's up?
You're starting to work out, it says 3, 2, 1. The user did that. Like, what?
You probably are missing data in the first couple seconds. Yeah, I don't know. They say basically the watch is not ready. Yeah, I don't know why. Thanks, everybody.
So the good news is I'm going to be the last talk for today. Good job for making it all the way through. My head is definitely buzzing with all this new information, and the good news is I'm not going to have a single line of code. I just want to talk about Icon Composer. Now, just a show of hands, who here has made an app icon before? Okay, that's a lot more people than I thought. Has anyone opened this app yet, the new Icon Composer? Show of hands. One brave soul. All right. So I feel like this thing looks deceptively simple when you first open it because there's quite literally nothing on it. And I was trying to figure out how it works, and the UI here is so minimal. The only thing you can really do is hit this little plus button and then either add a group or an image. But what does that mean? And I think it's really optimized for people that are trying to convert an existing icon to this new format. So what we're going to do today is take the icon for one of my apps called NYC Subway Widget, which is a widget that's cut off on the edge of the screen with subway times. And it has a beautiful icon that I commissioned. It's not AI. And the designer gave me a Figma file for it. So I took this Figma file and then I split it into its different components. And that's the circle, the green dot, the tracks, the body of the train, and then the train elements. And what I did is I turned all of these into SVGs. And the important component here is the size. So it has to be 1024 by 1024 to fit the frame perfectly. And then all you got to do is go into Icon Composer, hit the plus, go to Image, and then select all of your files. Now there's one caveat here. Maybe we'll have time for it later. Now, this doesn't look great. And that's because you have to set the color for each element in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is give my little outer circle here a nice little lighter black. And of course, you have the color picker. You can make it a little darker, just like that. Then the body of our train is supposed to be white. So I'm going to use a white gradient. It's actually very nice that they give you this auto gradient feature here where it complements the color with one that's a little lighter or a little darker. So you only have to select one color and then it turns into a nice gradient. The tracks are going to be gray. And I think that's it. Now we're going to layer this thing on top of the dot. And this looks almost like our app icon. Now, here's the caveat though, because I feel like Apple told us that all of this is supposed to be made of glass. So why can't I see the tracks behind the train? The answer is grouping. Now, all of these elements currently are in one group, which means they are one glass element, basically. They do have their own little shimmery things, like the little bezels. You can see there's like a little highlight at the top here, but not see-through. So all you got to do is go in one by one, drag these outside of the group to turn each thing into a separate group. And then little by little, we're going to see how this actually turns transparent. Now the layering is messed up again. We're doing it live. All right. So now it's a little much. And we can just go ahead and select all of these groups and fine-tune how the glass works. And for that, we can go ahead and turn the blur on. And this looks pretty good. Now, the beautiful thing is that you can actually preview this with a background and also in the new monochrome mode. Ain't that pretty? So with just a few clicks, we've created a brand new icon. We customized the colors. It's all, you know, Apple is very happy about the format of this, except for having too many visible groups down here. So you got to optimize it a little bit. Apparently 4 is the limit. So we got to figure out 2 things that we can put together here. Maybe this little guy and that little guy, and then put the circle up here. And still basically looks the same, and Apple is happy. So there you go. There is a bit of a weird way to add this to your app. What you can do is save this file as a .icon file. So let's call this glass. And then if we go to Xcode here and we open the folder where we just exported it, we have this file that we now need to, oh my gosh, I have too few hands. Add to our thing. Doesn't have to be part of the widget extension. And there it is. And then all you got to do is go into your app information, and somewhere in general, you can define the app icon. There it is. So we just call this glass. And now if you have very good eyesight, you're going to be able to see this thing change when I hit build. You know, we're doing it live, hopefully, fingers crossed. But that's it. I mean, you know, it really only works properly if you have an existing icon and you change it. But I think whoops, that was the wrong button. Isn't it frustrating that the mirroring, iPhone mirroring and the simulator have different shortcuts for going to the home screen? All right. Well, I'm going to blame some sort of caching for this not updating. But I did test this before, and it did work, and I did these exact same steps. So trust me on that one. To round this out, I make all kinds of apps, like the NYC Subway app, and I've recently started building my own analytics platform because I think all existing iOS analytics kind of sucks. So if you want to add analytics to your next or existing iPhone app, let me know. The URL has been on the screen the entire time. Thank you.